I know a person that you had kept in touch with, at least to some degree, is the late great Shad Gaspard, because you all worked on a project together. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. I did see that you guys had together like promoted a project years prior that you had done together. What was that like working with him, not just in a wrestling capacity, but outside the wrestling world, because he is so revered and loved.
Yeah. So I met Shad when he came to OVW, and he was beast. And I had been down there, for a little bit, maybe a couple of years. He came in and we started hanging out. There's a group of us that spent all of our time together. We'd wrestle together. We'd go out to lunch. We'd hang out at night. I remember Shad used to bounce at a bar, and we'd go see Shad at the bar. Fast forward, I had my career, a brief career, and then it's over with. And then Shad's just kind of starting to come into his own with Crime Time. And so Shad was always very interested in movies. Him and I were huge movie fans. We spent a lot of time talking about movies, and he knew that I was writing, and I had picked up a couple screenplays. And so he had sent one of the screenplays that he had written to me. And at the time it was more like a treatment. It was small, but it was based on a couple of movies that we both really loved. And we started talking about it, and we came up with, kind of a concept that was based on the original. And then him and I started working back and forth until we expanded into a full-length screenplay. A lot had happened in between the time that we had written that until now. But really that became a screenplay, became a graphic novel. Then the graphic novel got picked up and sold. And then the graphic novel was now being turned into a screenplay. After Shad passed, his wife and I, his widow and I now, had been collaborating with with a group called Scout Comics. They were the ones that originally had released it as a graphic novel. And Scout's goal and our goal was to eventually have this made into a movie. Really, it's funny, again, the screenplay made into a graphic novel, made back into a screenplay with some much needed updating. So we've had a lot of movement on it. We signed with State Street Productions. They've done some big movies, The Hate You Give, the new Bob Marley movie that came out last year. They brought on a writer and a director, and they're currently working on the pitch, and they're pitching it to some major studios. So we definitely could use a little bit of luck, but it's a solid screenplay. The idea is, it's a great concept. It's very unique. I haven't seen anything like it in 20 years. And then the director, writer, and the team that we have from Scout and State Street that are working on it really understand what Shad and I were kind of going for. They really understand our influence, and they kind of absorbed the graphic novel and the screenplay, and then it came out through them in a very fresh and unique way. So I have a lot of hope. I try not to get too excited, because I don't know, the movie business, it's like, we'll get back to you next week, and then a year later you hear, but it's positive. It's all been positive. So him and I, that's been our heart and soul. And, my goal is to get that produced and get it on screen, just in Shad's memory.
And it's been something that's been a part of your life for
a long time.
For like 15 years at this point, I think.
Yeah, 2008, 2009 is really when we started putting that down. The one thing that I'll say about Shad is that when Shad took the idea of this screenplay, which I had mentioned before, and I won't get into it, but it was rejected by one of the major agencies because they wanted the star, the protagonist, to be white, and we wrote him as black because it was always supposed to be a vehicle for Shad. So the next idea was Shad was going to make this into a graphic novel, and I had no money. I mean, this was the point in my life where everything was down. I was working at UPS overnight, putting myself through school, living in an apartment back in Syracuse, New York. And I just said, this is yours now. Like, I don't have any money to give you, and Shad said, we're 50-50 no matter what. I said, I got you. And he even made me sign a contract that said we're 50-50 no matter what. So that's the kind of guy that Shad was. And so the least I can do now is put everything I can into it, with Sil, with his wife, to get it on screen for him.